Submarines. Additional explanations. Commanders, we want to follow up on our announcement regarding submarines in random battles and share more details. Commander skill reset and upgrade demounting. The test of submarines in random battles is an important change affecting the gameplay experience. During the first 2 weeks of the release of Update 0.10.9, all players will be able to unmount upgrades and reset commander skills for free. For those who want to reset all of their commander skills at once, a special button will be available in our weekly mission briefing article, which will be released on the portal on Thursday, 7th of October for this purpose, so tomorrow. This will allow you to test submarines and their counterplay with different setups for both commanders and upgrades for free. As this is an important change for surface ships, since we've added depth charges to almost all ships. Sonar pings and homing torpedoes. The interaction between submarine pings and surface ships, in particular battleships, was a popular topic brought up by you. In 0.10.9, we made significant changes to submarines and their interaction with surface ships, one of which was the addition of anti-submarine warfare armament to almost all ships. So that's today, really. So we need to first evaluate this change's impact on submarines and other classes. After that, we will return to the issue of assessing the interaction between battleships and submarines specifically, and determine what further steps we need to take. If the following tests show that the current implementation does not work well enough, we will think about improving or changing it. We don't want to make any hasty decisions at the moment, since submarines have not yet been tested with all the latest changes. We would like to remind you that although submarines have gone through many stages of testing and are already in their final stages, they are still firmly in the testing phase, and we are continuing to work on them and change them as needed. Besides this, we also wanted to share some details about the sonar ping and homing torpedo mechanic. When a torpedo comes within a certain distance of its pinged target, it will stop homing and continue in a straight line. The range at which homing is switched off is 2.1 kilometer for battleships, 1.2 kilometers for aircraft carriers, 720 meters for cruisers, 360 in the case of a double sonar ping effect. Ooh, okay. Then that makes more sense in relation to what happened before. We're gonna have to rewatch the clip or whatever with the torpedoes that home in on the Ragnar, because now that we actually have distance values, we could see what that looks like, how that translates. Because it did look like when he got double pinged that the torps more aggressively homed in, and it could have been that they were like right on the edge of homing on, homing off, homing on, homing off, homing on, homing off. Then all of a sudden they get the double ping, and then they just home consistently in for X amount of time before they go terminal. So that's actually really interesting. This is good to know. Okay, so 720 meters for cruisers, 360 in case of double sonar ping, and 240 meters for destroyers and subs, 120 in case of double sonar ping effect. Also worth knowing that the last dev blog that they put out about submarines and stuff, there was a section in there where we wanted to share some details about the sonar ping and homing torpedo mechanic when a torpedo comes within a certain distance of its pinged target. Now, the way that it was described in a previous dev blog was that if you were charging it, if you were going towards it, you could get it to dead out faster. To which we extrapolated that the target or the interaction point is actually what it turns off in relation to, not the ship hull. And yet this doesn't necessarily seem to say that. This seems to say it's the target, meaning like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I just woke up. It means to say that it's within its certain distance of the pinged target. I still think we need to look at a few videos, because what they said before wouldn't make sense without it extrapolating off of the interaction point as a target. The where the torpedo and ship will collide, the projected interaction point, would need to be the target for what they said to be true. So, interesting. Puzzles, rar. So anyway, the range at which homing is switched off, 2.1 kilometers for battleships, 1.2 kilometers for aircraft carriers, 720 meters for cruisers, but half that if a double sonar ping, and 240 meters for destroyers and subs, half that in case of a double sonar ping. So double sonar ping, very important for hooking torpedoes into subs. Very, very good to know as well. Okay, submarine popularity. In our previous post about submarines, we mentioned our expectations on the popularity of submarines, measured by the number of times the ship is taken into battle in random battles. Unfortunately, the phrasing was not completely clear and caused some confusion. We will not make submarines overpowered to boost their popularity. It's the same thing about CVs. Oh no, the popularity's terrible. Emergency buff them so they kill everybody. It never happened. That was 2 years ago. Anyway, we will not make submarines overpowered to boost their popularity. Our goal is to create balanced ships with other classes always in mind. To accomplish a certain level of popularity, we improve or change mechanics. The stats of a ship will of course affect its popularity, but its mechanics will affect it a lot more. Not all concepts are created to be popular with every player. Some are designed to provide variety and fill less widely demanded, but still interesting and desired gameplay niches. Yeah, CV's not going to scratch the itch of somebody who just wants to run around a surface ship hurling shells down range, because that's not what they do. It's a different interaction, and it was the interaction that hooked me. I now play surface ships throwing shells down range, so that hook, that thing that was able to let me sink my teeth into the game and feel like I've got something there, not just air, gave me something to bite on, that allowed me to break into the game and to learn all about it and to play and have the experiences, etc. So, I mean, having these gameplay niches, some people might really not be about surface ship life and not really about plane life, but something about subs, they just appeals to them. And they'll play the shit out of subs, and then after they play the shit out of subs, they might play the other surface ships as well, because they want to learn what it's like from the other side. Same thing as with CVs. Yeah, so right now, submarines are performing relatively weak in terms of statistics. Things like damage, win rate, and their impact on battle outcome. Yeah, they got potentially over-nerfed in the last patch. So we are working both on balance and improving their mechanics. When we will reach a healthy level of efficiency, we will work on fine-tuning their settings. Sure. So right now they're still trying to dial in the concept. Once they've got the concept where they feel it needs to be, then they can start tweaking up the damage a little, tweaking down the damage a little, tweaking up the homing a little, tweaking down the homing a little. They just have to find the foundation that they're going to build their building on, and then they can start worrying about, what wallpaper is going to go in the bathroom. So sure. In the classes, if the class's popularity is lower, it will indicate that players interested in submarines do not like their mechanics, and we'll look into how we can improve them. If, on the contrary, the popularity is significantly higher than we expect, we'll first look at how it influences the game as a whole, and if it influences the game poorly, then we'll work with sub-mechanics and try to further normalize their interaction with other classes. We will not attempt to decrease the popularity with nerfs if the class is already well balanced. But we do not expect submarines to be overly popular due to the specifics of their mechanics and gameplay. As preliminary data from the current rank season shows, our initial assessments were quite close to the real ones. So, big thing is with this, if the class popularity is below their target of roughly 8%, well, that'll indicate that there are some people that want to play subs, but maybe they're just not working out in the game enough. It's a little frustrating, people pulled off of them. For instance, there are several people that like CVs. When the rocket change came into effect, it changed the way how CVs interacted with the game. On one plane type, but it still had a ripple effect, which changed the way that CVs interacted with the game. And there are a lot of people that, because of that mechanic, stepped back from the class. Because it's different now. They can't overcome it, they don't want to overcome it. It's not the same experience. And because that experience change happened, they're pulling back. Similarly, you could expect that CV population might be too high if they might, for instance, half the damage. But in making the damage halved, they could double the health on all the planes, they could make the planes extremely accurate, remove the machine gun stuff, so that overall CVs do roughly the same amount of damage that they do now, they just become unavoidable, but they do half as much damage per shot. And people might end up liking that a lot, so it's like the feel, whatever, can influence the balance numbers, but right now they're looking at how do we fit this puzzle piece into the greater puzzle, and then once we do, we can tweak on the mechanic or tweak on the specifics. So if the 8% is underperforming, then one would assume that their 8% target is underperforming because the interactions aren't there. And if it's overperforming, they might have interactions that are working too well. And it's not about just nerfing down damage numbers, nerfing speed, nerfing this, nerfing that. It's about wondering why the submarines are just absolutely overperforming in terms of influence and interaction and stuff like that, that they're drawing more people than expected to the class. I don't know where they came up with the 8%, but I would assume that's off of like several years worth of people that are requesting, I want to play subs, I want to play subs, I want to play subs, and they extrapolate that down to what percentage of the user base that is, and ideally it'll home in on 8%, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. Submarines popularity in ranked battles. Continuing the question from the previous season, we would like to share some data about the popularity of subs in ranked battles. As you can see, from the start of the ranked season, there was a peak in popularity of the class, but after that, the number of battles leveled off and has stayed roughly within 4 to 8% at tier 4 to 8% at tier 10. Can we make this bigger? Yay, we can. Nice. WoW's class popularity by dynamics. I guess this would have to be in ranked, right? Yeah, team build type ranked. Aircraft carrier, roughly about 6%. Submarine, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So yeah, there's definitely a surge up, and then maybe people rank out, I guess, and then the next season comes in, they rank out. That's a whole lot of fluctuation. So it lowballs at about 6.4, but it was still kind of like centered on, 12%, 10%. So in that ballpark, but a little high, but then again, it's new, so it's not surprising people would play it. Destroyer. When subs were high, destroyers were high. As subs reduced, destroyers reduced. And basically, destroyer players looks like they just swapped over to cruisers because this is all one giant line. So probably very similar play. And then battleships were initially low, but then they started to pick up as people got used to the situations. And even then, it's only by a few percentage points. Started just below 30, ticked up to a high of 34.5%, and then leveled off and is down at about 32.7. So very, very small movements. I mean, it can look very demonstrative on this graph, but you have to understand that entire grid square is just 2%. So swings down from like 28 to 32 and a half. These are roughly similar. Subs, yeah, we can see a lot of gyration. And then aircraft carriers, very static at pretty much a hard 6%, which is interesting. Class popularity and dynamics. This one. What is this? Last 6 weeks, aggregate by day. Ship level 10. What's this one? Ship level all. Okay. So this is tier 10 only. Sure. So carriers we see starting out at 2.7, peaking up occasionally to 4, even slightly over that, and then returning pretty much back to where they started at roughly 3. So 2.7 to 3%, kicking up occasionally to 4, but that's it. Subs, massive jump, all the way up to 14, which yo-yoed quite a bit and then leveled down to about 10, 8, 6, 5.5, with a small peak up toward the end, zoning in on 6. So definitely higher in the lower tiers, not higher in the top tiers, which would correlate. Gaishu was saying that he felt that subs were a little weak, especially after the recent nerfs. It was just like, I don't know if they were unplayable, but they felt like they couldn't influence the match. They couldn't make things happen. Alright, so remaining stuff. We have battleships. Nobody paid battleships because, oh my god, battleships are just gonna die. And then they realized, nope, battleships are still fine. So people played battleships. And that was right at the 30% mark. 30 to 31. And really everything else is in that same vein. Cruisers initially end up being the higher choice, with DD play initially peaking because let's kill subs, and then realizing, well, getting on top of a sub is hard. So that dropped, and then it just normalized and stabilized out. At destroyer play is roughly 28%. Well, this sure as hell isn't North America. North America loves their DDs. Alright, so all three surface ships performing roughly in parity. A percentage point here, a percentage point there. Subs a lot of yo-yoing, but really just kind of zoning in on slightly more picked than aircraft carriers, which are slightly niche. And aircraft carriers at roughly 3%. Neat. In addition, judging by the stability of submarine popularity, the basic mechanics work well, and a player base is already forming around the class. At the moment, balancing and fine-tuning the current mechanics is one of the most important things we will work on. This is why submarines are being tested in random battles. The spikes you can see in the graph are the effects of random bundles. Players keep submarines parked until the weekend and then can play them. Their popularity in the Golden League is decreasing, and we connect this to the fact that submarines are now a new, somewhat unknown class that is weaker than others. Since the main drive in Golden League is victory, players choose the class they feel confident in that will provide them the highest chance of winning. The fact that submarines are now weaker than other classes can be seen on the following graphs with data for the current ranked season. Relative damage is the fraction of the enemy ship's maximum HP you inflicted on the enemy. For instance, if the enemy has 20,000 health and you dealt 10,000, the relative damage is 50%. All values and metrics below are averages for the current ranked battle season. Okay. Relative damage. Are these both received relative damage, relative damage? I'm assuming this is in, like, percent of player kill. It's probably the best way to look at it. So on average, an aircraft carrier had about 87% of a player kill per match in bronze. Battleships had a almost a 1.1% or 1.1 player kills in bronze. Cruisers slightly over 80, 81% player kill. Destroyer 77. 77% player kill, and submarines actually quite low at 48% of a player kill. Okay, kick it up to silver. Aircraft carriers starts to surge ahead. Tier 8 carriers are powerful. At 1 point, is that like 1 point? What the hell? This is okay. So this is a 1.8 player kill battleship for bronze, which means this is probably like a 1.2? 1.2 player kill for aircraft carrier in silver. Sure. Okay, battleship gets pulled back a little. 9.2 or 92% of a player kill in silver. Cruiser, 82% player kill. Destroyer, again, 74% player kill. And then we've got sub, roughly 45% player kill. And then tier 10, aircraft carrier pulls back, battleship pulls ahead. CV in gold is 9.7. Battleship is, or 97% player kill, battleship's 98% player kill. Cruiser is 86% player kill. Destroyer 74, and then submarine slightly higher, 47% player kill. So roughly in flux. It comes down to battleship and carrier play. Cruiser and DD damage is still roughly in parity, although cruiser takes a jump up in gold, which is not surprising because cruiser handlers, they'll live longer, they shoot a little better. CVs are held more in check at tier 10 by tier 10 AA than tier 8 CVs are held in check by tier 8 AA. That is true. And tier 6 CVs, their damage sucks. I mean, yes, you can get wins and stuff, but their influence is markedly lower than the tier 8 and tier 10 versions of CVs. So this also makes sense. Okay, received relative damage. Received relative damage. I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure what this graph is. Received relative damage. Received. Well, carriers are the lowest in bronze. Actually take more damage in silver and more damage in gold. A lot of parity between the surface ships. So CVs and subs do take damage, but it is less than their frontline compatriots, which would make sense because the surface ships are frontline people. They're in the front doing things in the front, getting shot at in the front. And gold actually extremely even in terms of surface ship play. Silver much more even in terms of surface ship play than bronze, where cruisers get dumpstered. Sure. Destroyers are at least there, and battleships just, I guess, are harder to kill, maybe. And then CVs and subs. So I'm not exactly sure what this graph is supposed to say. The value is smaller for destroyers and cruisers than for battleships and aircraft carriers, since their task is to include spotting and capturing points, damage values. Yeah. However, smaller values are normal here, and they do not need to be equal for all classes. The lifetime of classes in battle, percentage value. How long they live? Survival rate, yeah. Aircraft carrier, very high, not a shock. Battleship has the highest survival in bronze after CV. And then subs overtake. Subs are the second in bronze, and they sharply overtake in silver and gold, where they can play safer, which makes sense. They have effectively a personal cloak. Not every ship has anti-sub warfare, and people don't know how to kill subs yet. They're learning, but they don't know how to do it. And then we have, so Silver League, very, very similar. Battleship, cruiser, destroyer. Gold League, people make battleships live a little longer than cruisers, live a little longer than DDs. And then in bronze, cruisers get clapped because they're easy to kill. And bronze are probably the least experienced area. Destroyers are a little higher than cruiser, and then battleships, well, live in bronze because they have armor and heals and probably less experienced players, so they don't get hurt as much. But survival rate, carriers go from 67 down to 63 down to 62 from bronze, silver, gold. Submarines. Submarines actually die quite a lot in bronze, which would make sense because they would position and get killed. Silver is up to 42, and then bronze goes up to 44. So more subs die than live. There's that, as opposed to CVs, where more CVs live than die, overall. Sure, okay. Not overly surprising, but alright. Interactions with capture points. What is this? Total capture point reward. Is that in terms of like base XP? Well, destroyers are primarily, they are the cappers. In bronze, out of 100%, they have easily over 90% of the cap interaction. Destroyers in silver, 81% of the cap interaction. Destroyers in gold, 82% of the cap interaction. CVs have very, very low cap interaction, which I assume is in terms of like maybe taking the capture point. Interaction with capture points. I don't know. I mean, it might involve defended ribbons as well, but so some CVs cap 10%, 10%, 10%. That's basically down to YOLO numbers. That's, oh god, something has to happen. Battleships, second lowest, 20%, 21, 24, gold, silver, bronze, respectively. And then cruisers and subs start really dancing around caps around 40%. Cruisers expand up a little, 42. Subs go down a little, 38. 37, I think it is, in silver. And then the inverse up in gold, where cruisers start to play down. They're 36 and subs pull ahead about 44. Because they're safer. And gold league players play safer. Whereas silver league's going to be a little more get her done, so to speak. Less worried about safety. So sure, that makes sense. So battleships in general, they don't live in cap points, which is not a big surprise. I think a lot of people knew that. DDs currently reign in the cap dominance because they do. And subs can attempt to cap against a destroyer, but a destroyer has tools to really kill subs. They have depth charges, they have guns, they can force plays on subs. Yes, subs can get kills on destroyers, but it doesn't mean that it's a guaranteed thing. Anyway, potential damage. Potential damage for battleships is a lot, and every single league you go, it is even more, probably because more health, but also I would assume skill. Although really it's a ramping pattern across everything. Oh, okay, this is probably just related to health and damage then, to be fair, because we can see these are just linear. From bronze to silver to gold is just a line. Cruisers from bronze to silver to gold is basically a line. Destroyer, same thing. Subs, same thing. Carriers, same thing. So really potential damage is pretty much the same. People get a little more health, the guns shoot a little harder, they do bigger damage, but potential damage is extremely similar for all classes, meaning in terms of playstyle, they survive as much when they come under fire, regardless of tier. Spotting damage. Scouting damage. Ooh, the aircraft numbers. So down in bronze, aircraft kicks out with about a 15k average. Silver League is basically the same, with a 116k average. Then we've got battleships, cruisers, under 6. Not a big surprise. Battleships aren't necessarily going to be in the front line. Cruisers aren't necessarily going to be in the front line, because cruiser doesn't want to die. And the battleship has range. He wants to not be farmed and fired, murdered to death. Destroyer does pull ahead, sub pulls ahead. This is mirrored almost completely in the Silver League, although the sub is able to play a little more forward than the destroyer, because technically it's a little bit safer, sure. And also, there's more damage in Silver League as opposed to bronze, so aircraft spotting goes up, sub spotting goes up, DD spotting stays the same, and even battleship and cruiser spotting goes up a little. So more damage, you know, more health, more damage, whatever. And then you get to gold. Whoop. Then the aircraft carrier launches itself up to about 42k. But again, tier 10 is going to have more damage, more health pools, bigger shells, bigger damage, bigger yada yada, all that stuff. So just the active spotting is going to increase your damage, but higher end players understand the power of what a CV can do in terms of keeping stuff lit and forcing interactions. And you can absolutely see that. Aircraft carrier does enable some spotting, but DDs definitely pull forward, as well as subs do as well. So if we noticed in silver, the subs pulled ahead. Well, they pull ahead even more in gold as higher end players know that they can exert themselves safely. And they do, which is nice. So DDs and subs really primarily spotters for the surface line, for the water line, so to speak. Cruisers and battleships, they're in parity, as they have been in the others. So nothing really different there. But it's really the aircraft that just kind of rocket off to the moon. But in games where there are no aircraft carriers, subs will take primary spotting duty in gold, followed by destroyer. Which makes sense, because subs are theoretically more safe than destroyers, and you would expect the players to exert themselves and provide information correlating to their safety, which is one of the reasons why aircraft carriers can do it, because they might lose some planes, but they'll live, right? So that's good. There's a hypothesis that the presence of submarines noticeably prolongs the time of the battle, but as we can see from the graphs, they did not have a significant effect on the time of ranked battles. Ooh, this one looks like a big one. This is a big boy. These are the different maps. Yeah, somebody said, like, it feels like we're on the same few maps over and over and over in this ranked season. I said I appreciated that because it allowed me to refine my tactics on each individual map, as opposed to having, like, 10 of them or something where tactics change every single game. Without submarines, with submarines. Without submarines, with submarines. Okay, so that's what that bar is. And average arena duration. So with submarines, it's a shorter duration. Wow, okay, so in bronze, with a sub, it's a few seconds less on first map, second map, third map, and fourth map. All maps with subs a shorter duration by a few seconds. Silver League, similar, shorter, basically dead on. In terms of Silver League stuff, the timing interactions for the average battles is extremely similar. So in some cases, actually literally similar, but still subs pull it back a bit. And then in Tier 10, which are probably going to be some of the more vocal players, the players that really invest in the game, learn about the game, etc., we do actually see that the time goes up. It goes up by 5 seconds here, goes up by 4 seconds there, goes up by 2 seconds here, and goes up by 5 seconds there. So it's extremely similar regardless. But Gold League does play safer with subs to an nth of a percentage. But we do actually see that subs do, quote unquote, drag out the game by an additional 2 to 5 seconds at higher tier. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much... I mean, realistically, if you think about it, yeah, there are less tools, whatever, to kill subs, right? Sure. But subs are just destroyers. And if you have one lone destroyer alive on the end of the map and he just decides to bail off to the edge of nowhere or something, it's the same thing as a sub that bails off the edge of nowhere. It's the same thing with a cruiser that bails off to the edge of nowhere. If you can't get eyes on him to shoot him, then you get to wait until the match runs out. So, same thing. Right. Blue is the duration of battles without submarines. Yellow is the duration of battles with, across all the various maps. Test in random battles. We had a lot of comments on our decision to test submarines in random battles. Submarines are a new class with new mechanics, and such tests considerably differ from standard ship testing. Yeah. In previous closed tests, we've focused on assessing the performance of mechanics and checking their general readiness in ranked battles. We've made changes, including those based on feedback, but at the moment we need to find the potential shortcomings, though the previous tests, due to their specificity, could not detect. This involves a fine adjustment of balance, polishing the mechanics, and other final touches. Worth noting, before I continue reading, ranked battles, I don't know what the number of interactions there, but I'd be willing to guess that approximately, give or take 10%, 25% of the audience plays ranked. So maybe up to 35, maybe as low as 15% actually play ranked, which means that the lion's share of the population base that play this game is going to be in random battles. There's also going to be a section that's in co-op, so at least they've had interactions there too, but most people that play this game probably never play any other mode. They never play competitive. They don't play ranked. They don't play anything. They just play random battles. That's all they do. They just go in, they play the random battle, they shoot some ships, they have a little fun, they turn off the game. So very important to get subs into random battles because that's where the lion's share of the player pool is. And while we can see while we would get information about what the player pool looks like in ranked, that's going to be a subset of the main player pool. So you're going to get altered data. It's better than no data, but you're going to get altered data because of that. So at least they could kind of hammer it into a rough shape so that when it sets sail in the random battles, it's going to make more sense. It's going to be in a better position. So random battles are best suited for this stage and allow us to bring submarines to their final state because random battles is literally their final state. That's the goal. As part of the test, so we don't have to urgently apply significant changes immediately after the release, as it was with updates 0.8.0 through 0.8.0.3 after the carrier rework. Ooh, okay, this is before me, but this sounds like stuff went live, and ooh, that's really broken. Let's do some quick and dirty code here and throw that to live server. Okay, I think we patched that. Oh, nope, there's another leak, son of... Okay, here's another quick update. Let's throw that out there, which comes out really hokey. It's problematic. But not only that, but it was 0.8.7, which is where CVs basically hit their final balancing state. And then they've been tweaked ever since. They haven't had major balancing decisions, although you could say that the rocket change was major. But fundamentally, the way that it works hasn't altered to a significant extent since 8.7. That's where most of the foundation got locked in. But I guess what they're referencing here is like emergency patches. Whoa, this is bad. And they don't want that. They don't want emergency patches. Anyway, this is an important stage that directly affects the balance of submarines and surface ships, and it requires a lot of battles to occur with submarines and against them. Yeah. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, as much as you can get, which random battles is going to provide. Depth charges. Well, we're happy to see that some wordings make you smile and even become funny memes. They may indicate that we were not clear enough in our previous communications. Our tests have shown that you really liked depth charges. So we wanted to clarify what was meant by the phrase, for example, judging by the test results, you enjoyed dropping depth charges. Ship depth charges are designed to directly impact the submarines and provide a controlled counterplay against the new class. Now we need to understand how this tool works, whether the players like it, and whether it fulfills the intended function. Do you understand that? No, sorry, to understand that, we asked many different questions to the test participants, including, what do you like against playing against a submarine? What do you like about that? Did you like using depth charges against the submarines? The use of depth charges in the current iteration is one of the factors that respondents liked very much, especially compared to the first iterations of the test. So we decided to note it to share the state of one of our main armaments used to counter submarines. We also noticed that the request to display a depth charge drop points. We have added this to the list of improvements and will consider ways to implement it. Yeah, because you hit a button to activate depth charges. You don't select depth charges as a weapon and then left click to fire. Which means if that's what they want to do, then they're going to have to turn that depth charge into a weapon, not a consumable that gets used. So they'll have to probably do some back-end coding for that, but it could certainly be done. Because once you select the weapon, then you can give the indicator to show how the weapon is going to be used. So they'd have to tweak some code there. Like they do with the airstrikes, for instance. You select the airstrike, you see an indicator, you place the indicator, you left click, it does the thing. But yes, I did actually hear, I don't know, like just this spoke about in conversation that people liked using depth charges. They thought depth charges were fun. They thought it was cool. So, Could it have been more effective? Could it have murder faced the subs a little better? Could it have, just die sub? Yeah, sure, it could have. They could always make them more powerful, but people thought it was novel. They thought it was nifty. They thought it was fun. Team size and servers. Many of you noted that we do not plan to increase the number of players in battle due to the possible increase in server workload. An increase in the number of players in battle does affect the server, but a lot less than, for example, battles with a lower amount of participants. Since this implies that more total battles are being played at the same time. Okay, so if you had, what is it? 12v12 is 24, right? So 24 players are in a battle. If you somehow cut the number down to 6 players, then suddenly you have 4 times as many battles that have to be individually maintained and tracked by the server. So that would be more interaction points as opposed to just updating positional data and choices for a single battle. You'd have multiple reference points. So, I mean, theoretically, yeah, that would be more intensive. But anyway, an increase in the number of players in battle does affect the server, but a lot less than, for example, battles with lower numbers of participants, like ranked, for instance, because ranked has 14 players as opposed to 24. The most significant load on the servers is exerted not by the number of players, but by the number of battles currently taking place. Brawl season in 1v1 format affects the servers a lot more than any other type of battle. Since brawls are fairly popular and we did not observe significant problems with the servers when they were conducted, we can say that our servers work efficiently in the overwhelming majority of the time, except in emergency cases. Our servers in 4 regions have been available 99.96% of the time in 2020, excluding the scheduled time for installing updates. Sure. Which they really do. Their server uptime is great. I used to play other continuously online games, and they would always have downtime. Which, when that's when you want to play, man, I wish I could play right now. This is why we consider the impact of the player's experience, and that almost the entire balance of random battles, maps, ships, other mechanics, is tailored to the 12x12 format, with its timings to be the main factors for the decision. Yeah, so, just to talk about this, I don't know if they're going to move on, continue to talk about it, but what is this tailored to the 12v12 format? What does this mean? It means that if you're in a battleship, you are expected to have a time to kill of 1.5 minutes against 3 ships. But when you kick it up to from 12v12 to 13 to 14 to 15, what's the likelihood that your battleship is being shot by 3 ships instead of 4, instead of 5? Then your time to kill of 1.5 minutes, which might be something where you feel like you didn't just walk in and die, drops down to 1 minute or 50 seconds, or maybe even less than that, because you might use your damage con and then die before your damage con goes back up, or you might use a heal and die before your heal cooldown rolls back up. In which case it's just like, well, there was nothing I could do. So it's not so much about the play more in the mid game after a few ships on both sides have died off, because then you start getting back to the 12v12, 11v11 format that people are used to. But in the opening minutes of a fight, you're going to have much larger waves of alpha and damage coming in that are just going to annihilate the first 1, 2, and 3 people off the field anyway, because 12v12 is already very powerful. It's why battleships play back so far, because they can easily get farmed at range because they're big, fat, and slow. And you have other people slowly moving forward, people slowly trade blows to start working on flanks, to start taking positions and start being able to express themselves. That happens when you have 12 on both sides. If you jump that up to 15, that pro-action, that early game, lasts even longer because there are just more ships. So it could actually make it more like Southeast Asia, where you have a lot of players that play back. They play for the long game, they don't play for the early game. Whereas I think in North America, they're much more aggressive. I think in Russia, they're much more aggressive still, at least I hear. So I don't know. Matchmaker restrictions. We've already talked about the limits on the number of submarines in a team. We would like to add that joint limits on submarines and aircraft carriers also apply. Okay. Tier 7 through 9 tier battles. Submarines, not more than 2. Soft restriction 4. Soft restriction. Soft restriction is probably normal restriction and flexible restriction. It's probably what that is more like. You know, what can it flex to? So submarines, you can have up to 2 on each side, but if matchmaker is, you know, taking a long time, it can flex up to 4 on each side. Aircraft carriers, starting restriction 2. What? And it can flex up to 2. I mean, this would theoretically only be in relation to tier 8s, but starting restriction 2. Well, it doesn't natively try to find 2 carriers per side. Okay. Interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's queued to be able to find double carrier situations, but I don't think it is. I think it aims for a single carrier, flexes up to 2. This might be a typo. This might be a typo. I'm not sure about that one. That one seems sus. Submarines and aircraft totals, aircraft carriers in total, not more than 3. I would assume this should be 1. So in a normal, non-flexed match, you know, sub 3 minutes or whatever in terms of queue time, a max of 2 subs and a carrier at most, or 3 subs, I guess. No, because this would be non-flex. This is flex, where it'd be 1 carrier plus 4 subs, which means if you had 4 subs in a flex situation, you would be forced to only have 1 carrier. You could never have a double carrier 4 sub. So that's worth knowing, I guess. I mean, I don't know if it matters, but whatever. Tier 10 battles, submarines, basically the same. This number looks correct, because I think this might be a typo. That's a guess, though. And then here, instead of having a max of 5, we have a max of 4, which means if there is a carrier in a flex queue situation, you can have no more than 3 subs in a tier 10 battle. So that's worth knowing. So tier 8 is more flexible on that, but tier 10 at most 1 CV and 1 CV and 3 subs. But in a normal non-flexed game, it's just 1 CV and 2 subs at the most, which is normal. Starting restriction, a team cannot have more than 2 submarines and 2 aircraft carriers at low tiers, 1 aircraft carrier at high tiers. Oh no, they doubled down on that, so okay. Cannot have more than 2 aircraft carriers at low tiers. This might be because there are more low tier players. There might be more tier 4, tier 6, tier 8 players than there are tier 10 players. So maybe they feel that they have to do this. I have seen many games where there's a tier 8 and a tier 6 CV. I don't often see double tier 6 or double tier 8. That seems more like a flex situation. So maybe this is coded in to be a tier 6 and a tier 8, but have more background dynamics. Anyway, the total limit is set at 3 ships for these classes. In battle, it can look like 2 subs and 1 aircraft carrier. By the 4th minute of waiting, for the first player in the queue, these restrictions are softened. Yeah, soft, restrict, flexible, whatever. In tier 7 through 9, no more than 5 subs in an aircraft carrier. 5 subs and aircraft carriers in total, but not more than 4 submarines. In tier 10, not more than 4 ships. So that would be not more than 4 subs or 1... What? This is weirded strangely as well. In tier 10 battles, not more than 4 ships of these classes in total. But not more than 4 subs and 1 aircraft carrier. But then they go on to say, but if both classes are present, 3 subs and 1 aircraft carrier. So these kind of mutually war, so I think that's a translation error. Or maybe it's just they were trying to describe a weird concept. I don't know. Anyway, it should be noted that you can encounter battle with fewer ships of these classes. We are talking about maximum numbers. These restrictions do not cancel already existing restrictions for aircraft carriers. We may make changes due to spikes in individual class popularity. Waiting time in the queue is one of the key metrics for us, and we do not try to allow too long a waiting time, as any additional limits can negatively affect the queues on Matchmaker. Lastly, random bundles. One of your feedback points was random bundles and the fact that players could receive access to Tier 10 battles without ever having tried high-level battles. We took this into account and changed the distribution mechanics to a chain of sequential combat missions. Okay, cool. Makes sense. To get access to a Tier 6 submarine until the end of the combat mission, you must earn 12.5 thousand base XP, in Tier 5 through Tier 10 ships. It's a little awkward, just because this is so high and these are not. Which is a little weird. But sure. So to get a Tier 6 submarine, you need a lot of base XP. So hopefully that keeps, I guess, the lower tier subs maybe in check, so they're not just like a flood of them. Whereas it's easier to get a Tier 8 submarine, it's easier to get a Tier 10 submarine, but you only get credit if you have Tier 6 and up ships, or Tier 8 and up ships. The final reward for completing the combat missions is 3,000 coal. So you can only earn up a Tier 10 submarine if you have at least a Tier 8. Which is functional enough. Tier 10 and Tier 8 gameplay is fairly similar. So, sure. This is a chain of combat missions. After completing the first mission of a chain, you'll get access to the next one. Oh, okay. So the initial one, in order to get subs, you have to play surface ships. You just do. Once you have unlocked a Tier 6 sub, you can go further with higher tier ships, Tier 6 and up. It's not much higher tier, but still. To get access to a Tier 8. And then if you happen to have Tier 8 ships, which could even be a Tier 8 submarine, you could earn base XP to get the Tier 10. Thank you for your time. We await your feedback on the forums, official Discord, and other platforms. So, yeehaw. That was fairly informative. And that is what I'd heard. I'd heard people kind of saying like, wow, there's a lot of information here. Good job, stuff like that. So